Today I want to talk to you about, I believe, probably one of the top two issues that will keep us from healing, especially if we're an unfaithful, but it does apply to the betrayed. This issue is really the most, or at least one of the most detrimental components in our own life that if we allow it to permeate the repair process, it will ostracize us, it will alienate us, it'll put us at odds with everybody of significance in our lives that we need. Our spouse, our therapists, our children, support groups, coaches, you name it. And it's the issue of pride. Pride will absolutely destroy the recovery work process. Now, I'm not talking about the pride that says, man, I take pride in my work, or I take pride in a, beautiful home, well-kept lawn, nice car, clean car, well-done document. I'm talking about the pride that is the obnoxious superiority. I'm talking about the pride that comes from a conceit that says, I'm different, I'm better, I'm not like you, I don't need that. I don't need that recovery work. I don't need those videos. I don't need that boot camp. I don't need an EMS weekend. I'm different, and my way is the best way. I can understand that you might be led to kind of go, well, Samuel, since you're going to have this discussion on pride, did you ever struggle with pride? Absolutely, I did. In fact, my inability to be humble early on pushed Samantha further and further away. As I had this continued air about me of, Rick's good and all, but, or, Leslie, I don't know about, as I just continued to try and marginalize therapist upon therapist upon therapist, coach upon coach upon coach, as I marginalized them, Samantha just completely felt this inability to connect with me, inability to get close with me. It reminded her of the affair. It reminded her that I was not a safe person. Alternatively, when I began to humble myself, when I began to not always have an excuse, not always pick apart the therapist, not always pick apart the therapist's lecture, as I just opened up my heart and received from people that were in my life, it drew her closer to me. As I always fought back when she was having a difficult time, as she was being triggered or angry, and I continued to get defensive or always try and have an answer or always try and defend myself, it just pushed her further and further away. As I humbled myself, as I stopped trying to defend maybe that little 10% that she was off on, but she was right about the 90%, as I stopped trying to pick apart and measure myself up against different therapists, and I just accepted what was being presented to me, it drew her closer and closer. It created a comfortability with her where she started to be vulnerable with me because I was becoming a safe person. When you're operating in pride, the slightest bit of will crossing, if you will, sets you off. And I remember one day I was having a conversation with my mentor. I thought we were just kind of, hanging out, talking. And I said a couple things that were extremely arrogant. And I could tell that he looked at me and he said, so let me ask you something. And inside of me, I went, uh-oh, here it comes. And he said, do you believe? And he just kind of rattled off a couple of things. And I stood there and I was like, I don't know what to say other than, you're exactly right. And I feel like the biggest ass right now. And you know what he did? He just said, good, because that pride is going to kill you, not help you. If you're always the exception, Samuel, the problem is you. If everybody else is always the problem, if you're never having someone ever appreciate you enough, if there's always a problem with the message that you're getting with the therapist, the pastor, the priest, if there's always a problem, if you're always the exception, there has to be something deeper going on. Until you can humble yourself and just accept the help that is coming your way, you're going to alienate everybody that you need in your life. You're going to be tolerated, but you're not going to be liked. You're not going to be appreciated. You're not going to be valued because you, at the slightest bit of offense, run with it. And you're offended. And all of a sudden you're mad and you're not being cared for. You're not being coddled. You're not being A, B, and C. There's always an issue. Samuel, you have to humble yourself. That pride, that easily offended nature of yours is not your friend. It's an enemy. It's stealing from you. It's alienating you. It's causing chaos in your relationship. It's not helping you. What has it gotten you this far, Samuel? It's gotten you on the brink of divorce. It's gotten you incredibly humiliated and alone because you have completely annihilated your life, your career, your family, everything, but yet you're so easily offended. You're so easily the exception. You constantly push people away because you refuse to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is the essence of bravery and courage and humility. If you refuse to be humble, if you refuse to be vulnerable, you're going to end up alone, and it's going to be your own fault, Samuel. That was over a plate of lasagna, and let me tell you, I'll never forget how that lunch was not just a wonderful plate of lasagna at an awesome Italian restaurant. That was a plate of humility being served to me. It was a plate of a choice being served to me. How would I react? How would I get up from that table? Because as long as I was going to become arrogant or allow myself to stay arrogant, as long as I was going to allow myself to be the exception and easily offended and always right, I was missing out on healing. I was missing out on oneness. I was missing out on Samantha's heart. Several years ago, a gentleman reached out to me and said, "Hey, we want to come to your EMS weekend." And I said, "Great." So we started talking, then I got his name. And then I recognized his voice and I said, "Are you such and such?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Man, it's an honor to talk to you. I'm so glad that you're reaching out." And I said, "Rick does private intensives, and if you'd like to talk about that." And he said, "No, we're going to come to the group intensive, and I don't care who notices me." And this was a very high-profile individual, and certainly his wife was a very high-profile individual as well. And I said, "Well, do you want to use an alias?" And he said, "No, I really don't care about that anymore. We just want help." And my wife is actually insisting that we come to a group EMS weekend. I think part of her wants to humiliate me, but I don't really care. I care most about trying to save this relationship. So if I need to do that, then sign us up. And I said, "Okay." I went to Rick and I said, "Now, Rick, I need to let you know this couple's coming." And he said, "A private?" And I said, "Nope, they're coming to the group one." He said, "Wow, okay." Friday morning of the EMS weekend, he showed up, and I was kind of torn. Do I make a big deal because I want him to know that I love him and care for him, or do I just kind of let him fly underneath the radar? And I remember they walked through the door, and I stopped and I just said, "Come here," and I gave him a big bear hug. It was almost uncomfortable for him. It was certainly not uncomfortable for his wife because she was just glad to be around people that she could relate to because they were both in this incredible medieval crisis of public moral failure. And we had just a great moment. And they were like, "Look, we don't really care. People know already. We just want to get help." And that's, I think, in many ways, the attitude that you have to have. Now, listen, no disrespect. If you are someone in the public eye and you're trying to protect your reputation, your company's reputation, there's investors and you have to do that. I completely get that. I'm talking more about the heart. It's all about a heart of humility that can receive. I'm not talking about being self-confident. Listen, you need self-confidence if you're going to be successful in life. And you need self-confidence if you're going to be able to kind of launch out into a recovery timeline that is healthy and is supportive. I'm not talking about being confident being secure or loving yourself and saying that that is in any way toxic. I'm talking about the conceited superiority that leads you to think you're always the exception. Listen, don't be afraid to have your will crossed. Don't be afraid to simply let someone who's an expert speak into your life, maybe call you on your arrogance or your conceited or your resistant nature. Trust the process. Trust the fact that if you genuinely want to heal, if you genuinely want to help your spouse heal, they will see it. The people that you are inviting into your life to help you will see it. But you've got to be humble. You've got to be vulnerable. Your refusal to be vulnerable will keep you from the connections that you need to succeed in your healing process. Your refusal to let your guard down will cost you more and more and more. Yes, it's about being humble, letting your guard down, being vulnerable with the right, safe people. Absolutely. Find the right, safe people. But don't allow yourself to always be the exception. Don't allow yourself to be easily offended at everything and everyone. Don't allow yourself to barricade yourself with your pride, which, if you're an unfaithful spouse, I think your pride has probably cost you enough.